In the depths of the earth lie a ruined city housing horrors beyond comprehension. Ancient guardians lie in wait for any trespassers brave enough to look for forgotten treasures. But what if the city was rebuilt within 100 days, making space for new life, both good and evil? That's my goal today, with a scorching surprise at the end of the video. Now, don't let creative mode put you off. This will be my biggest rebuild project yet. And I'm starting off with the main portal in the middle of the city, which leads to the other side dimension. Guarding each ancient city deep underground are wardens, which emerge from the ground when any noise alerts the screecher blocks scattered around the entire city. Screechers are triggered by skulk sensor blocks, and any unsuspecting person or entity triggering screechers a total of 3 times will cause a warden to emerge from the ground. Wardens are blind, but they have excellent hearing and smell, and one hit can easily prove fatal. In the better Minecraft mod pack, the portals in the center of the cities can be activated with a warden's heart, dropped after a player takes one out. Once a portal is activated, it leads to the other side dimension, which is essentially a warden themed dimension filled with hostile mobs and skulk related blocks. I'll be uploading a rebuild video of one of the structures from the other side dimension in the future, so if you'd like to see the result, make sure to subscribe. My goal for this portal was to make it a type of monument which portrays a warden's head, and could also serve as the main point of interest for villagers or tourists. So I fixed it up with tough blocks and added some detail to make it stand out as an important landmark. It's worth noting that in survival or hardcore mode, if anything is obstructing the portal, such as skulk veins, it won't light. So I ensured that any blocks added for detail wouldn't get in the way. Usually it's quite difficult to get up to the portal due to the amount of screechers scattered about, so for this build I also decided to make it difficult to access. The last thing I wanted was for my future villagers to wander into the other side. The next step was to add some light around the portal just to make it stand out more. Of course I had to light the portal as well, but I wouldn't be visiting the other side. That's for a future video. After adding the finishing touches, I could move on to the surrounding areas, adding grass next to the main walkway as well as on the inside of the portal's walls. Echo trees added some additional light and detail as well. I decided to go with a softer design palette such as stripped logs and light blue kaolin blocks for the main pathway, as well as the bridges. Of course, during the entire rebuild of this city, I came across many screechers and summoned a lot of wardens. Even in creative mode, they're not any less terrifying. After working on the bridges some more, I broke down the main pillars next to the walkway and planted some large golden oak trees. The saplings for these trees can usually be found in the ether dimension, which is another build idea for the future. If you've ever visited the better end, you'd know about these lumecorn plants. They're also good for light and detail. Some more detail around the area made everything look a bit better and welcoming. Spruce is an incredibly beautiful block to use in pretty much any build, especially for things like walkways, bridges, and trims. With the railings added, things were looking much better overall. Everyone knows that random ponds spell opulence, so that's exactly what I added, complete with lily pads, water lilies, and tropical fish. To avoid them despawning, I named them all fish, in case people couldn't tell. After adding some more detail and flower beds to the portal section, I wondered how the city would generate power. So I broke down the smaller towers to transform them into power generators, one side with lava, which would be the main power generator, and other side with royal jelly, used for backup generation. I also added some hostile mob trophies to act as gargoyles of some sort to the power towers. After adding a wall to block off the towers, I returned my focus to the path around the portal, as well as the walls. I used custom magma blocks which can be created by using the mason's table in survival. If you're familiar with ancient cities, you'll know about the secret room underneath the portal itself. This room would serve as a private study room for any inhabitants, so I cleared everything out and rebuilt each room with study spaces and bookshelves. The main village and living area would be far away from this room, so it's the perfect area for some peace and quiet. After completing the walls with some better looking blocks, I decided to move on to the farms, and these would be located next to the main entrance to the entire city. These wheat farms would give the city a welcoming atmosphere, and would also be far away from the main living area to avoid any damage to the crops. Once all the crops were grown, it gave the city an interesting look and was pretty satisfying to look at on the map. The final part of the middle section of the city involved rebuilding the outer wall, adding some lights and adding some lily flowers, which can usually be found in the other side dimension. After adding some trims, tidying up the area, and adding some detail to the grass, I worked on completing the bridge walkways. I originally wanted to build some of the villager houses branching off of the bridges, but decided against it to keep each section of the map focused on a specific theme, which will be seen by the end of this video. The last section is hell, to be honest. Finally, once the bridges were complete and some more detail added, I moved on to the actual village section. I followed a similar design for all buildings to retain the original town aesthetic, rather than having a city with varying building designs. I started by building a few villager houses, adding a small animal pen and a butchery. These buildings were for farmers specifically so that they didn't have to travel into the main town section to go to sleep. I marked some of the ruins that would be rebuilt into specific buildings: library, blacksmith, weaponsmith, armorer, florist, hunter, and so forth. First up was the library. I made 2 levels along with a checkout area, added some bookshelves for different genres, reading areas with tables and chairs, and, of course, the librarians, trapped checking out books for eternity. I also ensured that the library truly couldn't be missed. Next up was the florist and hunter's store, which I decided to merge just because both are nature related. I added some succulents and flowers and completed the additional details. By the way, these custom workbenches can be found in the mod pack listed in the description below. Check it out and let me know which custom villager jobs you like the most. I created a building for a cleric which doubled as their personal home. And also added a joint Fletcher's arena complete with training dummies and weapons. I built a log storage room followed by a control room underneath the villagers' main gathering area. The cherry tree could be seen as some symbol of peace or something for the villagers. Next came the Nether specialists and the mine. Of course, ancient cities are located so deep underground that the mine was reversed. Instead of traveling down, the miners would travel up to go and collect resources to bring back to the city. They had ender chests filled with god apples, food, and charcoal. And there were also short resting areas where they could take a breather between their travels. The miners obviously needed a storage space for ores and blocks and where they could go to eat between shifts. I added chunks of common blocks on the ground floor and more valuable blocks underneath, hidden from view. Because this city will be made up of both friendly and hostile mobs, such as pillagers, the added security was necessary to prevent them from finding the valuables right away. The town section was looking good so far. Next, I worked on a building for the blacksmith, toolsmith, armorer, weaponsmith, and any other smith that may be in the room with us right now. After that, I added a building for an oceanographer, complete with a water pit filled with axolotls. I named them all Fish as well. With most of the buildings complete, I only had a few more things to do for this section, such as adding a watchtower, which had 4 cannons at the top of the tower to blast any enemies to smithereens when needed. Of course, these cannons haven't been used in a long time, seeing as they'd mainly be for wardens. I also created a large nether portal off to the side of the city, which would be used by the miners and nether specialists to collect resources from hell. Finally, it was time to build the pathways between buildings and add a few parks with trees for some greenery and variety. Once these were done, I filled the rest of the space with grass just to give the section a bit more of a natural vibe. Just to add some heat deep underground where temperatures were likely freezing, I added a lava pool. Once the final details were added, it was time to explore the second section of the city. I just didn't have the time to break every ruin down by hand, so I used TNT to do the job. This would be the hostile area of the city, so I thought a desert theme would work well. Once all of the sand was added, I placed some end cacti all around for light before moving on to the main temple in the middle of the area. This is where different types of pillagers could be found, and where there are pillagers, there are villagers. Prisoner villagers. Once they were imprisoned, I added the various pillagers, but decided to keep the inside of the temple rooms fairly open to boost the pillagers' noise so that it was easy to recognize it as a hostile building before even seeing it. Again, these different types of pillagers can be found in the mod pack below, in the description. By the way, if you liked the video thus far, consider subscribing. I do a mix of hardcore and creative vids on this channel. Third and second to final was the water section. I blew up all of the ruins, added a stair trim and filled it with water. For this area, a dock was placed, so naturally, a ship was needed. Don't ask me how it got there or what the purpose was. Villagers are strange. I built the ship without using any references, but we'll say that the ship was used as a point of interest. Perhaps the city flooded in the past before the pillagers and villagers showed up to rebuild. The ship was to remind them of the past. Yeah. I added a few ocean temples with varying designs and also added a bunch of umbrella trees that grew into the ceiling, almost as if the roof grew over the city instead of the city being dug out originally. I added some small beaches as well as a crab, dolphins and turtles. They were all named Coconut. I'm great at naming things. With the water section done, the city was becoming alive again, so before I worked on the fourth and final section, I added a few finishing touches all around. Finally, it was time to create the Badlands area. I was getting close to 100 days, so I decided to make this section utterly chaotic, a place nobody would ever want to visit, complete with lava and a prison right in the middle, which would hold the worst of the worst criminals the city has ever seen. Villagers, pillagers, wandering traders, goblin traders, and iron golems found themselves surrounded by blood to remind them of their crimes. So, after 100 days of rebuilding an entire ancient city, it was all finally done. The city had its life restored and modernized and housed both friendly and hostile mobs to bring some balance. If you enjoyed this creative process and would like to see more, subscribe. If you have any requests or even any feedback on the builds in this video, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video. Peace.